for you. So, okay. Did it
And
start?
maybe while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just so that we're not finagling that as you.
Perfect. Should be recording on my end, which is good. So, okay. We're on the fifth slide versus the first, I think.
Nope, we're on the first.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So, welcome to all of you from all around the world, not just North America today. It's exciting. I'm Nick Stover. I'm the founder of the Nature Photography Collective, and I'm really excited to be hosting Beth tonight on this creativity preview of the mastermind class she's doing, but also just a huge amount of the creativity knowledge that Beth has been cultivating over her period of time. I got a little bit of a preview of the slides, and you guys are in for a treat tonight. Lots of good information. She's keeping me on my toes, so be on the outlook for a new way of doing polls. All the way through there. And the only housekeeping item, I'll leave two housekeeping items. One is it is being recorded both by Beth and by me. We're not trusting my internet connection in the Yukon, even though it seems to be doing okay. So you will get a copy of it tomorrow. And then the second item is please put your questions into the Q&A, not the chat. We're going to have plenty of time to answer questions either about the mastermind or also just about creativity in general. So this will be a different presentation than some of you that have been coming to the speaker series for years, where we see a lot of visual displays. This is going to be a lot more about the creativity aspect, which many of you have been asking for. So I'm super excited to be able to bring it to you. With that, Beth Buelow, ladies and gentlemen.
Me. Okay, well, I'm going to introduce myself in a minute, but I want to hear from you first. And this is where I'm going to put Nick to work in putting up a poll. On a scale of 1 to 10, what level of resistance are you currently experiencing with your creativity and or your photography? And keep in mind, 1 means no resistance. Like no, you're in the groove and things are just flowing and you feel good.
All
And
right.
10 is you are completely stuck, like no movement, inertia, right? And 5 is like moderate. You can do it, but there's churn or tension there. So click on that 1 through 10. Which one represents where you're feeling right now? And I'm hoping everybody can see that poll.
Well, this is great. I'm loving this. So we're seeing 68% and climbing have answered, and we're seeing a lot of middle of roaders, Beth.
Okay.
Five have answered, 25% have answered there are five, which
Okay.
indicates we can, they can be pushed one direction or other. We have some of the tens, they're completely stuck, no movement. And we have one brave one that's a one, has no resistance and they're in the groove. So this is great to see the range kind of all the way through there. Um, a lot on the higher ends and the lower ends. So this is exciting to see people taking the time to let us know where they stand and
Yeah.
hopefully gives you a gauge for today as well.
Yes, definitely. And no matter where you are on this spectrum, even if you're in that lower end, my guess is, or the low to no resistance end, you've probably experienced it before. You've probably experienced blocks, and maybe you're on the other side of one right now. But the one thing that's guaranteed is that we will experience them again in the future because we are creatives, because we care, because we're artists. So wherever you are on the spectrum, my hope is that you're going to be getting something, super valuable out of this time. So thank you, so much for joining us. And we'll be circling back and talking more about this. But I thought, I have been popping up in a lot of Nature Photography Collective emails lately. It seems like every time I open up one, I'm like, why is my mug in there again? So I thought I would introduce myself because I know that I know a few of you, but a lot of you might not have crossed paths with me before. So I thought I would just introduce myself through kind of my creative trajectory. And so the image you're seeing there, that's me, probably about 3 or 4, I think I'm 4, sitting at my grandma's table in Delaware coloring. I loved color, paint by numbers, anything that was visual and putting color to paper was something that made me happy. And then I sort of evolved and graduated up to being a musician. And so I saw Rick is in Bowling Green, Kentucky. This is the uniform for Bowling Green High School back in 1986, probably 85, 86. We had black and yellow uniforms. We called ourselves the bumblebees as a joke, but clarinet was basically my life for, I don't know, 13, 14 years. It's what I went to college for. I have a bachelor's and master's in music performance. And so I thought my trajectory was as an artist, but as a musician and a performing musician. And at some point, resistance and other blocks kind of set in that I didn't know what to do with at the time. And so that led me to shifting gears and going into arts administration and nonprofit management. And then that led to a career in coaching and being an author. So this is me with my book, The Introvert Entrepreneur, published 10 years ago this year. So I'm really delighted, that it's still out there in the world. It's still in print after all this time. And it's one of those artistic goals that I had probably from the time I could pick up a pen and put words together. So my coaching journey started in 2008, and this book was published in 2015. And I've spent the past few years more focused on educating and mentoring the next generation of coaches in my professional coaching capacity. And then as things evolve and plot twists abound, I now find myself creating more of a life as a photographer. And my focus is on the non-literal and abstract. I do take sometimes, straight scenes, more traditional landscapes and whatnot, but I'm really more of that non-literal and abstract focus, mostly focusing on nature and architecture and the occasional human being. I also host the Pixels podcast, which is now under the umbrella of the Nature Photography Collective, where I talk to a lot of both emerging and well-established photographers to get their stories and explore the heart and art of photography. One of the reasons we're here tonight is because I'm also the coach and facilitator for the Creativity Mastermind Group that's being hosted by Nature Photography Collective this fall. It starts in September and the groups are already starting to form. So it's exciting to see people already signing up, even though we're a few months away. What I'm sharing with you today is kind of a taste of the kinds of conversations that we're going to be having in the group. And so if you find this content meaningful, valuable, helpful, then I invite you to, think about if a mastermind is a good fit for you. And I want to turn it over to Nick for just a moment, because I know he wants to share a little bit about how this fits into nature photography classes and what he's excited about.
Yeah, you bet. So, this has been interesting. So the collective has evolved. So many of you have showed, wait a minute, was nature photography classes, now it's the collective. You have Beth to blame for that. She's the one that came up with the idea of, hey, this is more than just classes. What about naming it something like the collective? And so, yeah, that was made a lot of sense. And so the vision I've always had for nature photography classes was to grow it beyond just the online speaker series and online things into individual mentoring, into group learning environments, and through all these other things. So I've always had the mastermind idea in the forefront of my mind. But in particular, when Beth and I got to know each other better and better and better over the last couple of years and her coaching background, this was such a perfect fit to really do our first mastermind class and bringing together these small cohorts to be able to learn together. So this is a great preview of what to expect, or what that's going to look like going forward. And I'm really excited. This is the first mastermind class we're offering.
Yeah. And I'm honored to be helping to, yeah, kick it off
Yeah,
and
let's do it. So.
way, so and Nick referred to this before when he was talking, but as I hope you're expecting based on the description of this session, this is a different conversation than usually happens at photography related events and webinars. And as fun as it is getting new gear, learning Lightroom techniques and tricks, or going to a workshop, those aren't necessarily the answers to the resistance that we sometimes feel. Our focus is going to be more on you and how you see yourself. And if you notice, and this is getting kind of meta as I share this, but if you notice yourself feeling even resistance during this webinar, to listening to talking about stuff that's more about energy and the shadow and hearing a few poems that might be a little bit too on the nose. If you feel that resistance, jot down a note about what brought it up and let it go for now, knowing that you can always revisit it later. But my bottom line invitation is like, stick with me. Because in doing so, you're already going to be practicing how to move through any sort of creative or mental blocks that you might experience as you continue to grow as an artist. So I always like to start out by defining some terms. And resistance seems like it's an obvious, we all know what it is, but it's the refusal to accept or comply with something, or the attempt to prevent something by action or argument. And what is that something? What is being resisted? And so I pulled another part of the definition where it says resistance is the degree to which a substance or device opposes, and here's the part that's being resisted, the passage of an electric current causing energy dissipation. And so, of course, that's talking about more in engineering and electrical terms. But we also know that energy is, creativity is a form of energy. And when that energy is coming in, it is like a current that is passing through us. And when we're feeling resistance, we're blocking that flow of energy. And in reality, that energy is trying to tell you something. And that's what we're going to be spending a little bit of time here in a few minutes talking about. And so, how does this resistance show up? These are all, not all, but a nice sampling of some of the behaviors or beliefs that we adopt that signal that we're feeling resistance to something. It might be procrastination, putting things off, perfectionism, getting too into the details or thinking things that need to be perfect before we can move on, overthinking, giving into distractions. I'm prone to that. I can think of distractions even such as napping or going down the YouTube rabbit hole, or, oh, I have to take another class before I can keep going. Defaulting to the norm, staying with what's comfortable, impatience, self-sabotage, comfort zoning, as that's the staying with what's comfortable and known. Oh, always focusing on the same subjects, listening to the same voices, looking at the same kind of art, or following the same people. Or imposter syndrome, which is another psychological term that we often hear used by artists and photographers when they're stretching out of their comfort zone and finding themselves in spaces where they're not sure they belong. Sometimes even, and I didn't put this on here, but sometimes even getting sick or injured is a reflection of resistance. And I hesitate to say that because I don't want it to sound like I'm blaming our thoughts, that we bring it on. But what it does maybe come from, and what is worth examining, is that it might be because we are distracted, we are tired, we're feeling impatient, we're not paying as much attention. And so if you find yourself, having some of those situations happen, that might be something to look at and say, I wonder what resistance might be happening here. So again, I want to ask Nick to pull up a poll here. And I'm curious how resistance shows up for you. And this is in general, it doesn't have to be like what's happening right now, but what do you find is the most common way resistance manifests? And if you don't see it here in this list, I invite you to share in the chat what it shows up as. And so, Nick, you're going to have to, I don't see the results of the poll. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't know why it gives me all the privilege. So we have this one's fun because it's three scores. So procrastination's jumped out to an early lead. So good congratulations on not procrastinating, voting on the poll. So 54% with perfectionism in second, with 38% people that come in through perfectionism. Then we have overthinking. Sorry, excuse me, distractions are third. I think or nope, distractions are now second, all the
Like,
way through. Yeah, exactly. Not distracted. And then we're seeing a lot of people on overthinking. 31% are on overthinking, 23% on comfort zoning, 13% self-sabotage, and then we drop down to defaulting and imposter syndrome are currently tied neck and neck
okay.
within there. So Procrastination is definitively the winner, though,
Yeah.
59%, 58%, moving all the way around. We're also hearing from Marilyn. She's saying avoidance, not just procrastinations, is how she sees some of her resistance.
Yeah.
Um, we've also had some sharp people like Todd quoting Star Trek as his resistance is futile. Um,
Yes.
that is the Borg, though. That is not Beth and coming all the way through. So, oh, we get Victor said he's distracting by taking another class right now. At least he's being honest within there.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Yep.
so,
Good.
which is great.
Yeah. Awesome. And there's there's a lot of overlap between these, right? Like we procrastinate through distractions, we procrastinate through perfectionism. We're overthinking and perfectionism. There's a lot of sort of overlap, but sometimes something is, it's like, what's the leading and the dominant way that it shows up? And I
Yeah,
totally procrastination because that's me too.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
And we had
And
a couple people say more than that, more than one on the list. Another person,
yes.
Peter, said, I think I often procrastinate because I'm surrounded by clutter, by my clutter, he says.
Ah,
Ah, interesting
oh
too. So,
boy. Oh boy.
good.
Yep. I resemble that remark. Yeah. And what we're highlighting here, I think also is like, as you're each chiming in with your own experiences with it, is that this is a huge topic. Like the more I thought about it, and I meant to ask Nick, okay, so how much time do I have? Because this is tip of the iceberg. And so recognize, I want to also check expectations. Like we're doing a bit of a, yeah, tip of the iceberg on this conversation. And just sort of, acknowledge that, but hopefully it gives you enough to kind of keep exploring and asking yourself these questions and noticing more, like self-awareness about how it's showing up for you, because knowledge is power. All, we're going to be full of cliches tonight, I think, because there's a lot around this topic. So thank you everyone for sharing. So what is it that we're actually resisting? Often it's not the task or the change or the challenge itself. It's how doing it will potentially make us feel. We're resisting feeling discomfort or incompetence or uncertainty. This can, and as creative people, it often does mean that we're also going to experience a challenge to our sense of identity. Like if I'm perceived as being a certain kind of photographer or having a certain level of um, competence, like you're used to seeing a particular quality of image. When I stretch into something new, it's going to shift. You're going to see something different. You might be like, huh, that's not up to, that's not her usual quality. So what's going on there? And so our sense of identity can get a little bit fuzzy. And the truth is, we're trying something new or different, and that's vulnerable and a little scary. And so we do have some choices about how we can deal with that. So I have, three, and there are probably many responses to resistance, but these are some of the sort of umbrella ones that I put together. One is we can ram through it. We can push or power through it. And obviously this can work, and it's certainly how many of us deal with it. And I love this particular quote: the muse will visit, but she has to see you working. And it's unattributed, but it's a variation on something Picasso wrote, which was inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. There's absolutely truth to that. There's truth to the power of, ramming through that resistance, a sort of just do it mindset. That tends to be what the societal message is. And so we push through, we fake it till we make it. We force ourselves to climb that hill no matter how steep it is. And we let the adrenaline kind of carry us. Um, but the consequence is that we cycle through an exhausting series of highs and lows. And so we burn out, our energy fades, and we don't really get to the heart of what was causing the resistance in the first place. So we can exist on this cycle of like adrenaline crash, but we don't really get the to the heart of it. And you've heard the saying, what we resist persists. And if we resist the self examination into our creative blocks, they will persist until we finally get the message, slow down and take a closer look. Of course, we can retreat from it. We can let the resistance win and not deal with it. We can give up. We can distract ourselves with everything else except for the thing that we feel pulled towards doing. And I, as I was thinking about this, I thought if you're familiar with the show Arrested Development, any of the characters on this show embody this notion of encountering resistance, those opportunities to grow up, and they deflect into other options. Anything to avoid the hard work of being mature and being fully themselves. And I shared Buster here because he's likely the most arrested of them all, as he still lives with his mother and is in a perpetual state of confusion. And so we arrest our own development when we let the resistance go unexamined and we deny ourselves our potential and our promise. What I want to invite us into is more of a reframe and releasing into it. This allows us to see the bigger picture and to have more ability to move fluidly through those highs and lows. So they're maybe not as high and not as low, but like this, mountain range in Death Valley, there's a little bit more gentleness with the ups and downs. And overall, we find a way to neutralize our resistance so that it doesn't have so much power over us. So it doesn't define us. We're not a person who's always stuck. We look at it, and this is sort of a Zen way of doing it. It's neither good nor bad. It just is. And it's an indicator. It's not our end state. It's not our state of being. That resistance is the edge of our comfort zone saying, hell no, because whatever's on the other side of that resistance stands a very good chance of being uncomfortable or highlighting where we might feel incompetent or uncertain. And so you're seeing the reframe and the release as that middle ground between ramming through and retreating. You're moving forward, but you're doing so intentionally and with curiosity. And so this creates space to discover the gifts that the resistance might be bringing. And so what's the benefit? And I've already referred to this just a little bit. When we feel resistance, there is actually a gift to us. It does serve us in some way because it's pointing towards a growth edge, that place where we need and want to stretch. It often means that we're ready for something new. Like you might even say we feel restless, but we're resistant to moving because of that overwhelm, feeling of incompetence, what have you. It tells us about something that might be important to us. And on the good end, it slows us down and maybe gives us space to just kind of assess, to look where we've been and where we're going. And so it's an indicator of untapped potential. So when we consider a new direction, a skill, or an idea or challenge and think, I can't do that, it's the golden shadow showing up. And here's why I'm going to talk about shadow for just a moment. So the golden shadow is a concept based in Jungian psychology and popularized by Robert A. Johnson, who's a Jungian analyst and author. And he talks quite a bit about this in this book, Owning Your Own Shadow, which I highly recommend. When most of us think of our shadow, we imagine like that dark, scary side of ourselves that can't ever see the light of day. But what's not common knowledge is that we have also part of the shadow that has a golden side to it. And a very basic way of thinking about the golden shadow is that it is the keeper of traits that we admire in others that reflect our latent, unclaimed potential. So Johnson posits that it's part of our life's work to acknowledge and reclaim these parts of ourselves that we think just belong to other people. But in fact, they are actually also in us. And we often resist this golden shadow and embodying and exploring those traits. We kind of push them back. Because then if we started to explore them and we started to claim them, we'd have to do something about them. We'd have to step up and take action. It's easier to think that the person that we admire is somehow supernaturally talented or a master beyond whatever we could achieve. If we act, we're saying, I can do that too. And that makes us vulnerable and we might fail. And I put fail in quotes, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. But once we start acknowledging that and claiming it, we become responsible for that piece of ourselves, for that gift, that goldenness that's in us. And if we don't make it happen, it's not on anyone else. It's like we're also responsible for it happening. So it's not the easiest thing. But the thing about the golden shadow is if you can dream it, you can create it. If you recognize it in someone else, if it resonates with you, you have it in you as well. If you see it, if you hear it, if you feel it, it is in you. Even if it's buried under layers of FUDs trying to protect you. And FUDs are fears, uncertainties, and doubts. And that comes from 1970s, 80s, I think. And it was IBM in their marketing and branding department where they said, how can we make people afraid of switching to another kind of computer or operating system? How can we instill fear, uncertainty, and doubt in them to keep us with our product? So we have them to thank for that particular concept, but it's something that absolutely is underneath a lot of our resistance to things. So thinking about what are the FUDs that are kind of burying that golden shadow. And so, like I said, what you resist persists. So there's this invitation to listen to what the resistance is telling you about your relationship to your creativity. And instead of rejecting with it, engage with it. So why do we want to be in relationship with it? There might be something in the resistance that's telling you that you really, truly don't want to do something. Resistance might be intuition. I had that when I first started my coaching business. I went into it assuming that I was going to focus on coaching nonprofit leaders because that was my background. That was my area of expertise. But I resisted everything that I needed to do to make that happen. Like I knew what to do, but I wasn't doing it. And at one point, I finally came to terms with the fact that I really didn't want to do it. It's just that I thought I should do it. And it's what made the most sense, but it wasn't where my heart was. So another interpretation is that it's pointing you towards exactly what you should be doing for your own creative growth. And again, I think of that when I realized my niche was introvert entrepreneurs. The first thing I did was reach out to somebody who could help me with something that I had resisted and I had dismissed as something that I could never do. And that was improv. I knew it was going to be horribly uncomfortable, but I also knew that it meant my growth would be exponential if I moved towards that instead of resisting it. We don't have time to explore all the antidotes to every way resistance manifests, but I am going to share 3 ideas with you that I really hope resonate and you'll find something useful with. And they're all going to require some level of introspection. So just to put that out there. So radical acceptance. This antidote is true for any of the ways that resistance is showing up. We don't fight it. We don't struggle with it. We don't wrestle, deny, or force our way. We're not ramming through it. It's not giving up. It's welcoming it in. And it's accepting and meeting yourself where you're at. And, before I was talking about how, maybe you're just at this, I don't know whether I said holding place, but you can think of it as a plateau. So I'm guessing many of you have been on a mountain. You might have done mountain climbing of some kind, or you've done hiking that is intense. And you know that you can't just keep going up and up and up and up without any sort of plateau, without some sort of break. And when you're on that plateau, that gives you that opportunity to say, okay, here's where I am, here's where I've been, and here's what I have ahead of me. And so you get to kind of assess the situation. I just did a Pixels conversation with Alex Noriega, and we were talking a little bit about resistance and blocks. And he said, when I was blocked, And then he corrected himself and said, well, actually, when I was on hiatus. And I really appreciated the way he reframed that for himself right in that moment. Because how we talk about it, how we accept what the situation is, makes a difference in how well we're able to move through it, how long we're in that space, and what we can do with it. Because we don't have to be push, 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 and go, go, go all the time. We need space for ideas to marinate and to come and go and to fall into, fall together in all sorts of different ways. Um, and I want to actually, I want to throw in something here that just came up this afternoon, and this goes back to noticing what role the resistance, like once you're able to accept, okay, this is what's happening, then you can start to examine it. A coach or a client I was coaching today, she was talking about something, like when I asked her what she wanted to talk about, the topic she brought up, there seemed to be some hesitance with it, but she's like, yeah, this is what I want to explore. And as we talked about it, I noticed this resistance. Like I just could feel that she was really working hard to respond to my questions and to reflect and whatnot. And so after a while, we discovered that she was talking about it because she thought she should be talking about it, not because it was something that she was actually interested in cultivating or exploring. It was just I see my peers doing it and I feel like I should be doing it. And what if I'm missing something? Um, and so there's a little bit of FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and maybe a FOMO, fear of missing out, that was in there. But when we realized, oh, okay, maybe that resistance to talking about this is actually giving you this message, that obstacle is keeping you from doing something that would be inauthentic. Um, so to be able to welcome in what you're experiencing so that you can discern, is this something that is telling me what I want to move away from, or is it something that I want to be moving towards? And the first of two poems that I'm going to be sharing with you, this just speaks to this so clearly. It's from Rumi. It's called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows or a crowd of resistors who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, the resistance, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent from a guide from beyond. So that invitation to accept what it is, notice, sit with it, and be in relationship with it is one way that you can start to um, kind of have some, it re-empower yourself. So it's not in control of you, but you have a little bit more control over it. The second one is to be average. And this is an antidote to resistance that shows up sometimes to the procrastination, but iconic or different or special in order to be creative. Few of us do our photography so that we can be average. We all hope that when we go out with our cameras that we're going to come home with not just usable images that we're happy to share, but like some fantastic images. And we hope for images that might get some attention on social media, or they might be added to our portfolio, or be able to be entered into a competition, or we might sell prints. So we start chasing that. And there's nothing wrong with that, with wanting and striving to create amazing images, because we all want to be proud of it. Like we do that because we get this kind of, there's kind of a rush or a high that comes from like really nailing something, right? And there's tremendous value in releasing the pressure that we sometimes put on ourselves to be amazing and instead embrace being average in the spirit of moving through anything that's blocking us. Um, because this focus on being amazing can lead us to resist making art if we even anticipate that we or the conditions are not conducive to making good art. And so, what if it didn't matter? What if being average was the goal, at least at the start? So, I want to share an experience I had at a photography workshop and then a few images that go along with it. This was last summer in Olympic National Park. And I'd been obviously in the Pacific Northwest. I lived in Tacoma for 10 years, was familiar with what the woods and whatnot were like out there, but I don't think I was prepared for what it would be like to be immersed in that environment for almost a week. It did not take long before I really felt stuck, overwhelmed, especially like the full immersion in everything that was just green. And I was there, TJ Thorne was leading this workshop and he loves that park and he makes amazing woodland imagery. And so I had this internal narrative placing self imposed pressure on myself that I needed to create amazing images in this place. I mean, I'm at this workshop, I paid a lot of money. I'm with this amazing photographer and with these other amazing photographers who are on this experience with me. So I started feeling this resistance, even pressing the shutter because the woods were so chaotic. Everything was so green. I just felt like I don't know what to do with this. And I thought, whatever I make, it's going to be terrible. So don't even try. And imagine that I could do what I wanted if I pressed the shutter. But if I did, I would then have evidence that I was a terrible photographer. So I got through that by letting myself take some horrible photos. And I mean, I look at these, and even a year later, I only have like a vague memory of my intentions, but they're not just average, they're bad. And this is where I had to start. I had to allow myself lots of space to take bad photos to get my creativity moving into a more meaningful direction where I wasn't feeling that resistance. It's like sweeping the cobwebs out and reminding myself that just because I take a few bad photos does not mean that I'm a bad photographer. And so once I started doing that, and once I stopped looking for the epic and I settled on the average, both being average and looking at the average, I started seeing more. And I gave myself permission to photograph anything that caught my eye without any judgment of whether or not it was a good subject or bad or whether I could do anything with it, and not thinking about whether it was going to be a meaningful or a useful image in some way. And so I started to tease some things out. And these two images off here to the right, I just started noticing all of the ferns and the ways that they were landing on the forest floor and the curls and the curves and how they sometimes interacted with each other. And I thought, this isn't going started to ease and fade. And I started creating more personally meaningful work. And so that's the power of making a practice of being average. We can release those expectations and the pressure that might be behind that resistance and just become present to what's in front of us. And we enter into a partnership with both our inner landscape and the outer landscape as it is. And the more we make room for the average, the more likely we are to move through the resistance that we're feeling and sort of stumble our way a little bit into making more compelling and creative and meaningful images for us. And so the third and final tip is about daring to fail. We have to get it out of our heads that the pros don't fail or make bad photos. I know that if I were to ask all of you, we know this intellectually, like we absolutely know it, but emotionally, especially when we're feeling stuck, it can be hard to remember when we need it the most. We feel like no matter, what we do, we're never going to get to that level. And so daring to fail is a reminder that we have to give ourselves space to iterate, to evolve. And so this is all about experimentation and taking risks and allowing ourselves to do that, giving ourselves permission to just play, to stick our neck out without knowing what's going to happen. Um, and as they, what is it, Silicon Valley, fail fast, fail often, and fail spectacularly if you can. And I don't even like fail. And so that's why I put it in quotes there, because it's so negative. It has so much negative energy and emotion around it. And again, we know intellectually that failure is part of the journey, that it happens to everyone. But that means that, and it means, it's an indicator that we're trying something new and that we're on our way to getting better. But emotionally, no, it doesn't always quite sink in. So the challenge, whether you're in whatever you're talking about with failure, the invitation to dare to failure hits a nerve that is our ego. And we could spend a whole nother, we could spend hours talking about ego. But one of my favorite quotes about the challenge of the ego comes from Father Richard Rohr. And he wrote, "The human ego prefers anything, just about anything, to falling or changing or dying. The ego is the part of you that loves the status quo, even when it's not working." And so taking a risk, and that's what moving through resistance is, it's the last thing our ego wants, because that risk is challenging the status quo and it's making us vulnerable. And it might get bruised because of real or perceived rejection. And so we avoid putting ourselves out there, because in our imagination up here, I can have a solo exhibition. I can win the top prize. I can sell all my prints. I can go viral. But as soon as I step out of my egocentric imagination and into the real world, I might learn that I'm not ready for the exhibition or the top prize, or that not enough people want to buy my prints, or that my Instagram followers don't like my image as much as I do. And so we give in to that resistance and we stay small and we avoid that potential conflict between expectation and reality. And we keep to that status quo. We let the resistance sort of win, even though it's not working for us. And so daring to fail is a requirement for us as artists. We can't play it safe and small. We have to keep showing up and remembering why we do what we do. We do it because we have to. And yes, we want others to like and find meaning in our work. But if that's what we lead with, if that's our motivation, then we're going to end up diluting our vision in favor of what's popular. And so by daring to fail, we can meet the resistance with patience and persistence, because we have to work through it. There aren't any shortcuts. And Edison is like the font of wisdom around failure, resistance, persistence. And this kind of quote exists from many people in different variations, but our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. Usually the breakthrough that you're looking for is just around the corner. And if you just take one more step, as challenging as it might feel, as heavy as your feet might feel, as much as the gravitational pull is working on you, one more time. And so, on a baseline level, creativity is a series of iterations that build on one another and doing it one more time, one more time. And so, part of the work is about keeping calm and carrying on. um, and we can slip into thinking that everyone else is just turning out fabulous image after fabulous image with little or no effort. And we know that that's not true intellectually. And so this iterative process plays out in our photography when we take dozens or hundreds or even thousands of like dud images, ones that we might objectively say are failures, but we have to go through those to get to the one that actually clicks with us, clicks, literally and figuratively. And so the other piece of this, remembering the iterative process and being willing to fail, is that we can think that it's easy because we see more triumphant photos. We see our peers, operating in the zone and traveling and doing all this epic stuff. And this is what we show the world. These are the wins that we have. And I think of another quote. This is Stephen Furtick, and he says, the reason we suffer from insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. He shared that way before social media. So it's only, the truth of that is only amplified, a million times now. So this is what we see. This is the highlight reel. This is the reality. This is me. All three of these are me. But this is the moment in Death Valley, climbing an ibex dune, where I was struggling, and I wondered, am I going to fail to do this? And I had to take a risk, and I had to be willing to kind of look silly in doing this. So I had, all of us, we have to like dare to keep climbing, even if you're going to collapse before you get back up again. And in case we need a reminder, your first 1,000 photographs are your worst. And if this is true, there's no way that you're not going to encounter resistance in the course of making those 1,000 photos. So know that it's part of the process and commit to being curious about the resistance and trying to figure out what it's trying to tell you. So before I move on to some challenges that I want to issue to you, especially if you're finding yourself in that 7, 8, 9, 10 area of the spectrum of resistance, I've got 2 exercises for you, 2 activities that I am really hoping you will give a go. But before we do that, I do want to do just like this quick little commercial about the Creativity Mastermind Group. You heard about it in the beginning. There's so much excellent content out there about how you do photography, but there's just not as much about the being. And so this group is designed, and the focus is on you exploring, taking the time and being in community with being able to explore your creativity, specifically your photography. You'll be able to engage with other people. The groups are going to be small, no more than 12. And you'll be able to talk with your colleagues and with me and share your work and discuss your vision and your voice as a photographer. And so the entire purpose is to build your confidence, clarify your vision and your motivations, provide tools for your personal and creative resilience, and to just overall facilitate your artistic growth. And my goal is to create a supportive space for that honest feedback, honest sharing, and even taking risks. Folks who've already enrolled are interested in stretching their capacity, learning more about who they are as artists and how they can show up more confidently in their work. And so I've put a QR code on here that if you take your phone, if you're not watching on your phone, you can scan that, and that's going to take you straight to the information page about the group. And I'm going to ask Nick to put the URL in the chat so you can find that as well.
And
Another
I've done what you've asked, Beth. It's in
Awesome,
there.
thank you. Mission accomplished. So the thing that's also very unique about this, that's different from other kinds of webinars or workshops or experiences, is that you're part of a cohort and you're going to get to know each other over time and really be kind of a support to one another. And each month we're going to be diving into a different aspect of creativity. And I'm not going to read through these, but you can see and get a sampling of what are the different topics that we're going to be talking about. And the other cool thing is that approximately half of each session will give a participant the opportunity to have the floor for your assigned month. And during that time, you can bring examples of your work to the group to request coaching and feedback. You can share images, your artist statement or your bio, a work in progress, image descriptions, project ideas, a place where you are feeling resistance or feeling stuck. You can bring whatever is on your mind that you want to move forward on, and maybe get some coaching and feedback and discussion around. And you get 4 one-on-one coaching sessions with me. And that can happen over the course of the program, where you can go into a deeper dive on any questions or challenges or opportunities that you want to explore that are going to help you reach your goals. So if this is a big ask of anyone who is contemplating this. So if you have questions about it, when you go to that webpage, there's a place, and I think Nick is also going to put the link in the chat, where you can schedule 15 minutes with me, where we can just chat. And it's not a sales call. I want to emphasize that. It's me just hearing from you, what questions do you have about the experience, and learning more about you and what you would hope to get out of it. I hope you'll check it out. I hope you'll join us. Nick, anything to add before I keep going?
Yeah. So that's starting to work closer with me. And one of my mantras is move fast and break things. We talk a lot about just within the context of, doing not going for the perfect on all the stuff, and oftentimes, really working our way through this and this fail forward mindset mantra that Beth was talking about. So in both of those veins, I realized on the main website, we never
Uh-oh.
we never explicitly said it's only 12 people per
Oh,
cohort. I'm
okay.
like, wow, we missed a very obvious detail. So that is a super obvious detail or thing I want to. So this is only 12 people
Yep.
once a month, has a one-on-one once a quarter session with you.
Mhm.
So this is not a webinar. This is something where you're going to be interacting with other participants, other people throughout the world, most likely, or at least throughout the North America, that are on a similar creative path and journey. So there'll be live meetings, so you'll get to see and interact with people all the way through there. It's not going to be a chat box or whatever else. And so we've missed the ball. We'll have to fix that tomorrow. Just say it's only 12 people, and I know it's already 30% full. And so that's a key thing to stress is it's designed to be very intimate, using Beth's coaching practices and coaching techniques and also her creativity. The other thing I want to say, I know I'm kind of taking it away from you, is one of the things about this that I think, even in the quotes you share and the resources you talk about, is this is not your typical boilerplate creativity type of approach. Um, so a lot of people will talk about flow with Mahali. I can't ever say his name
Right.
correctly.
I'm
Or
impressed. Tried.
yeah, I tried. So I got it right one time. Or a lot of quotes from, typical creatives out there, typical creative books. And Beth's approach really dives a lot deeper and broader into some fresh ideas and concepts, which is great.
Yeah,
Um,
awesome.
so I'm really excited about that too. And I also learned a lot today. So
Cool.
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, click on the stuff in the chat, find time to talk with me. I would love to hear from you. So I'm going to close out first again with a poem and with your the challenges that I hope you'll take on. So as we come to our time, I want to share this poem by David White called Start Close In. And it's about slowing down and letting the resistance do its work on us. So start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way to begin the conversation. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. To hear another's voice, follow your own voice. Wait until that voice becomes an intimate, private ear that can really listen to another. Start right now and take a small step you can call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake that other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing close in, the step you don't want to take. Ooh,
Ooh.
I know, right? Talk about like throwing down a challenge.
See what I'm currently reading right now?
What is that? Oh,
Consolations from David White.
excellent. See, it's
I thought I was the only human out there who's reading him currently. So, but,
oh, David White's awesome.
yeah,
So
it's deep stuff. Some of them I'm like, "Whew, I need to take another sip of coffee before I keep reading." So,
exactly, exactly. So I thought his words were like the perfect setup to, lead into this invitation, these exercises, and your mission should you choose to accept it. So I have two exercises I'm going to propose. One, it's fairly simple, but it's still going to give you some good insights and a tool to help break through blocks when you encounter them. And it's probably going to be familiar to many, if not all of you, but for, using it in this way might be a little bit different. And the second exercise requires a bit more commitment, but will start the process of reframing your thinking so that you can shift your relationship to resistance in general. So this first one, like I said, that might be familiar is like 20 photos, and it might vary in its name and what the criteria are, but it's basically a creativity exercise, but it can also be an exercise in noticing resistance. So set a commitment to do this particular exercise anytime you're feeling stuck about what's next, because it's a low risk, inconsequential way to break through loose blocks. So the idea is that you challenge yourself regularly by taking an ordinary object and making 20 consecutive unique images of it. You really have to work it. And this gives you practice in seeing and in moving through frustration and resistance that will probably set in around image 11 or 12. At least that's what happens for me. I get about halfway through and I'm like, I can't, I don't see anymore. I want to stop, but the invitation is to just to move through that resistance, to move through that impulse to stop and just keep going and slowing down and getting creative. And what I find is that, and maybe this is the abstract mind in me, is I move from representational to much more artistic. It ends up being a little bit freer. I don't know if you can call this very last image of the Scotch tape roll artistic, but you have to admit it's very non-literal, whereas where I started up here in this upper left was very literal. But in doing this exercise, especially if you really pay attention, like what's happening within you as you move through this. It starts out and it's pretty easy, like, okay, I'll take that literal image. And then you start working it. And the more ordinary the object, the more resistance you're probably going to feel. Like I'm even thinking about, taking like your thermos. I've used an iPhone holder. I've used a little mantle clock, a coffee mug. Whew, a coffee mug will bring that up because the simpler it is, the more challenging it's going to be. So think of this one as both a creativity exercise and something to do when you're feeling stuck, to just get the wheels turning and to notice what it feels like in a very low risk and short term way to power through that and get to the other side. So the second challenge, which is a little bit more, asking a little bit more of you, is over the next 14 days, make it a priority to explore your golden shadow that I talked about half an hour ago. So notice, become aware of your golden shadow. What kind of creativity do you see and wish you had? You're scrolling through your Instagram feed or Facebook or browsing photographer websites or competition, galleries of winners, and you're seeing things and you're like, wow, I wish I could do that. If you can see it, you have it in you, even if you're looking at it and thinking, I have no idea how they did that. I don't know that I could do that. And so first, just notice that and notice what you're drawn to. What kind of artist do you admire most, but think, I couldn't do that? And keep a journal or make notes or, whatever, voice memos, something that captures whenever you feel that ping of, wow, that's really cool. I wish I could do that. Or even the next step, which is like, oh, I'm not that creative. That's beyond me. My brain doesn't work that way. If you saw it, your brain, it's somewhere in your brain to work that way. And then reflect, in what way do you already have or demonstrate that creativity? If you have that vision, where do you need to build skill or even courage to express it? And just, notice, like, if you're admiring the boldness or the color, abstraction, minimalism, storytelling ability of another photographer or artist, again, reflect, where's that already showing up in you? Where are you already demonstrating that? And where's the seed of it? And what do you need to help that grow? And then third, consider what you specifically admire and set an intention to be open to opportunities to act on that. You might have heard, I think it's called different things, but I think of like the green car effect. You buy a green car and all of a sudden you see green cars everywhere. Or you break your arm and you go out in public and all of a sudden you're seeing all sorts of people that seem to have casts on a limb. Your awareness is heightened, and so you see more of that thing. And so as you become more aware of what you're attracted to and what might be hiding in that golden shadow, you're going to start noticing it more. And so to be open to those opportunities. And this is not about, and I'm thinking of Cole Thompson and photographic celibacy and, looking too much to other people, but this is a little bit of a flip side of that, of noticing and being open to it, but it's not to copy it, but it's more to create something that reflects that trait in you. And then finally, create, like actually, pick up your camera or whatever tool of choice, because that's really what this is about, is just creating something. 1 to 3 images that represent those possibilities, and be average. It's not with the intention to create a portfolio or some sort of social media image, but it's more as a tool for your own self-discovery and to provide evidence. So Beth at naturephotocollective.com. If you're willing to share with me, hey, I tried this and here's an image that came out of it, or here's what I noticed, or here's what I learned. That way I can email back and celebrate with you and say, that's awesome. So I would love to hear from you and what your experience was. So in whatever time we have left, questions and wisdom from the group. Like Nick said, this is not the mastermind in particular, it's not just a one-way street. I'm not going to be sitting there like lecturing to everybody all the time. I am assuming you all have wisdom and experience with this. You've
Oh yeah.
tried things. So
Yeah.
what's come up?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Well, like I said, I know some of these people on here personally. Some of these people on here have also sent me printed copies of their work or books or zines or whatever else, and or shared with me creative thoughts of what they're going through. So there's a huge amount of that creativity, I think, for a lot of people that needs that little nudge or the push or even the interaction to flesh ideas out, which is oftentimes the case for us. Like, oh, this is something I'm thinking about, but I'm too ashamed to even bring it up um, to my wife or my partner or something. Well, shoot, now I'm in a group with a bunch of other creatives and photographers. They're not going to think I'm crazy for this or that or whatever. So I think it's exciting. So Elise asks, what are these the sort of exercises that will be part of the mastermind series?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And those will, and because it's kind of co-created, I'm hoping other people have ideas and like, oh, something that worked for me, let's give this a try. So I'm going to bring things. I'm hoping other people will bring their own experience. But yeah, it's meant to be, um, it's not just talking, but doing as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think these exercises, I mean, when you shared with me that we talked about the format and you shared with me some of these exercises you've already established through your coaching practice, I think that's the key thing for a lot of people to understand. This isn't just like shoot from the hip, like, oh, this will be kind of fun. It's like you're a certified coach, like you're legit to be able to put these kind of structures and things together, which is really cool for me to think about, or I think for a lot of people to think about what that's going to mean within their stuff. So,
Yeah. What else is coming up? Any questions or other comments or observations?
um, two questions that came up. One was about the time frames. One person was asking, in particular, about the masterminds for based in Southeast Australia. So I posted the times in there. And for those of you, we have a couple of you that linger from East Coast or Europe. There's actually flexibility in either Mastermind A, you could potentially do if you were in Australia or New Zealand. Mastermind B timeframe, you could do if you were in the EU. And we do have a good following of EU clients as well. So I think that's pretty exciting. So Wanted to put that in there for people to know. Mercedes is saying, thank you so much. Inspirational for sure. And I agree all the way through there. Um, Mike saying, as an engineer, I'm very literal and analytical person. Ooh, we know those kinds of people.
Yeah.
Any advice on pushing past the literal? Good question, Mike.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would say depending on I'm curious if that 20 photos exercise resonated with you or some version of that where you're giving yourself space and permission to start with the literal and go through an iterative process where you're slowly stretching that into a space that's non-literal. And when you're doing that, don't get hung up on it has to be a good photo or it has to be interesting or anything. It's just anything that will take you into that place where it's not recognizable anymore. Just as a way to stretch that, and look at art too. Like stretch your own visual vocabulary. Go if you usually go to a museum and you're looking at the more literal, representational pieces of art and whatnot, or something that's more concrete. Um, Say, I'm going to spend 10 minutes in this contemporary gallery where I'm looking at, stuff that seems seemingly random. And I'm going to stand in front of it and I'm going to think, I'm just going to, I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to judge my reaction to it. I'm just going to take it in and just see how that feels. And so those are the first things that come to mind as one way to do that. I'm sure there's a lot more, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that's like all if you when you look at a 12 week, well, there's a couple facets I look at when I think of the structure. One is there's probably going to be at least one of those weeks in there that will completely change some major aspect or major block you have in your creativity. A lot of them are going to be substantial shifts or changes or takeaways, et cetera. And then, maybe one or two within there isn't that, doesn't necessarily resonate or whatever else, but it expands a huge portion of your mind. And there's just so much value that gets created over 12, 2.5 hour sessions. The one-on-one coaching with you in between as well is like super valuable. Like, I should be using Beth as a creativity coach rather than as, I need to get signed up for this. But that concept, I mean, you thinking about somebody that is working through the exercises that understands the questions is really exciting. Because it's like Marnie says, fabulous session. I can feel the rusty wheels trying to go around. And I think, for me, as I watch parts of this presentation or think about, latent potential or some of these other concepts you're talking about, it's like, gonna sometimes take a little bit, it's gonna feel a little bit awkward, like Mike was talking about, or whatever else to kind of move in new directions. But all of a sudden, things are gonna start to click and align and really, like your examples from Olympic. Yeah,
Yeah.
these are not just, what did you say? These are not just mediocre photos, they're bad photos. Yeah,
Yeah, they're not just average, they're just
they're
bad.
just bad. And that's the
And
top advice I give people all the time is they're like, how do I get asked all the time, well, how do I become a professional photographer? I say, you take a lot of bad pictures,
a
you know,
lot of bad
a
photos.
lot of
And
bad pictures. So,
and I'll just throw in just literally hours ago, I was walking the dog and listening to a podcast called Hidden Brain, which I'm guessing a
mm-hmm.
lot of heard of.
Sanjay
And
Gupta.
yeah, and it's either the most recent or one of the most recent. It's something about doing hard things. Let's see. And it's all about this. It's all about like how we want to take the path of least resistance, what happens when, um, and how actually resistance is part of our need as humans. Like we need something that's going to require some effort from us. Like we'll say we don't want to work, or we say we just want to sit on the beach with a cocktail. But in actuality, we start doing that, we get bored and we want to be challenged in some way. And
Yeah.
so that's another way of seeing resistance is like it's an invitation to step into some challenge that's going to, yeah, it might not feel good. Like you go on a run, right? If you're a runner, it might hurt. It might be a slog. You might be like questioning your life choices. But then when you're done, you're like, okay, that was that was really good. I'm glad I did that.
Yeah, so I've been listening to a ton of podcasts on this trip. Hidden Brain is one of them. The other
Okay.
one is I've been catching parts and pieces of Ryan Holiday. And
Mhm.
he's an individual, this is a Stoic philosopher, but he writes his most popular book is called The Obstacle is the Way. And that's the exact theory of you need things that challenge and push you to be able to go all the way through. So, which is good. So, couple more
Yeah.
comments and questions.
Uh-huh.
One is Rick says, this has been a great and very informative. I've already signed up for my one-on-one with Beth to flesh out my initial thoughts and questions. Thank you, Nick and Beth. And I think that's a key thing, is it might be like, I think this works. Maybe it doesn't. You know, Beth seems really charming on her podcast and on the video. Is she really a real deal? What she is? What are my specific questions and to sign up? So far, I think we're 100% on people that have booked that 15-minute call and really understanding how it applies directly to them. So please book the 15 minutes with Beth to spend some time to chat with her and get to know her better. Other question came through from Mike. He said, any practical advice for someone who might need to miss one of the monthly sessions?
Yeah. Yeah. So, there are 12 monthly sessions. With the permission of the group, my suggestion at the beginning is that we record them in the both so that you can rewatch them later, especially if you're the person in the hot seat that month, but also in case you need to miss all or part of a session, you can go back and catch it.
Yeah.
So yeah, my hope is that you wouldn't need to miss more than one, two at the most, because I really want you to be able to get that full, experience. But don't let a scheduling conflict with like one or even two of them
Yep.
be a deal breaker.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we'll probably end up housing these, both the same way for those of you that are familiar with the speaker series, house them in multiple places. We'll probably have the one, it'll show up in your library each particular week with any downloads or things that Beth wants for you to keep and have. There's going to be, also homework. She's not going to grade your homework. Like you're not going to get kicked out of the class. At least I don't think, right?
No,
Yeah,
no,
exactly, because I think we're all here to learn and grow creatively, which is really excited. Um,
yeah.
Mary also asks, or added, I've already thought of a thing I'm scared to do and now will do. I love that.
Woohoo. Go
Yeah,
Mary.
that's just is super exciting. So,
Yay.
well, good. Well, we still got a big chunk of the people here that came. So, any final questions, comments, things to share with the group before we go on our merry ways on this lovely Tuesday?
No, I'm super grateful for everybody who came and for your questions and your comments and your participation. And I'm grateful to, it's not every photographer and photography community that would dip into something like this. So I just have big gratitude for Nick and the collective for bringing this to life. And we're building the plane as we fly it.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's how we roll.
Yeah. Well, we gotta try things. And I mean, the biggest thing is I listen to the audience when they talk. I read every single survey that is put out and everything single thing of what people are looking for and what they want, or if they have interest in it. And if they're like, no, there's no interest in something like this, I'm not gonna bring it to you. But if you're saying, yeah, that sounds interesting, I would like to do something like that, then I want to bring it to you and provide the value. Just like with everything else at NPC, it's 100% money back guarantee. So, we want to get you in there and have it be a ton of value. But I can also tell you that it's gonna be the value. And if for whatever reason you take it and start finding it doesn't fit, don't even worry about getting your money back. I'm not sure we'll have to refund because we rarely do, but if we do, we would definitely will. No problem at all. So
Yeah. And if you're thinking about this, like Nick said, it's not just a webinar. It's an interactive co-creative process. So you're going to be asked to do some work.
yeah.
So yeah, if you're ready to roll up your sleeves and get to it, then I would be delighted to be your partner in that.
Well, it's great. Well, I'm excited, Beth. Lots of uplifts. Uplift I had, I hoped it would be very timely, and that's exactly right. We want to bring things of value to help you. Sherry says, thank you, Beth and Nick. Thanks for this. I have some things to think about, which is great. We want to provoke the thoughts. So even if you don't find you don't have the time or whatever else within the mastermind, seeing Beth and hanging out with Beth is as
Yeah.
enjoyable as it can be. So
Yep, this was meant to be a standalone, and if you
Exactly.
could go
So
further, then we welcome that.
perfect. All right, Beth. Well, I'm gonna go try to wrangle up some food before I retreat into the bush for 7 days. I'm gonna get my last real meal up here in Whitehorse. But we'll be
Okay.
back in touch, all. Thanks so much for coming out tonight, and we'll be seeing you another time.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Bye.